Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Jay, the world's first HR virtual influencer. And today I am thrilled to introduce you to a guest who's truly one of a kind in our field. Mark Fogel is a nationally recognized HR leader, consultant, speaker, and educator. But he's perhaps best known by a nickname you won't forget, the HR Jedi. Mark has built a career challenging outdated practices and speaking out on issues many avoid, including ageism in the workplace. Today, we'll explore how HR can combat ageism, ensure AI is part of the solution rather than the problem, and why courage and ethics are essential for our profession's future. Mark, welcome. It's an honor to have you here.
Jay, thank you. It's great to see you today, and I'm really looking forward to having this conversation.
Now, Mark, you've led a lot of HR teams, from retail to manufacturing, from education to consulting. It really seems like you've done it all. But before we jump into any specifics, I have to ask about this nickname, the HR Jedi. What's the story behind that?
You may not know this, or the listeners may not know this, but the nickname actually started as a bit of a joke at a national SHRM conference back in 2017. Someone called me the HR Jedi after a presentation where I was challenging outdated practices and said, HR must be the force for good. Sounded a little bit like Yoda.
Yoda, I love it.
It stuck. And over time, it became more of a philosophy for me. Like the Jedi, HR needs to be both strategic and provide a moral compass for employees and management. We're not just policy police, we're culture stewards. And we're often the only ones that hold the line when leadership loses sight of what's right. So I think that the HR Jedi fits me very well. Plus the fact I'm not just the HR Jedi, but I'm the last HR Jedi. Because as you can see, I have a little bit of gray hair. I still have my hair, but there's a little bit of gray hair.
I could see Yoda and HR professionals sharing a lot of similarities. Wasn't Yoda a teacher?
So, and that's true. The reference there was to Yoda. Yoda as a teacher, Yoda as a strategist, Yoda as somebody who approached things in a practical way to get things done. HR folks have to be culture stewards. They've got to be role models. Yoda was the perfect role model for the Jedi. And I think that being able to have that type of concept in resonance for HR people, I think that's really, really important. I think it's important to me, but I think it's also important for the HR profession that we get beyond compliance, that we focus on what we can do to help partner and help management succeed, help leadership succeed.
Mark, you've warned for years that ageism is HR's last taboo. Many assumed AI would make hiring fairer, yet the lawsuit alleging Workday's algorithm screened out candidates over 40 suggests ageism is still happening. How can HR actively combat ageism, and what guardrails can turn AI into part of the solution instead of part of the problem?
I always say that ageism is the last taboo in HR. It's the last of the discriminations to get addressed. And it's often invisible, except when it's happening to you. And obviously, I'm somebody who's an older adult. I've been in the workforce for many, many years, and I've seen a lot. And my personal perspective is that it's become rampant in happening to individuals in their late 50s and early 60s since COVID. AI is supposed to eliminate bias. And when we think about bias and we think about data, AI could be a great tool to help us eliminate bias. But we can also get caught up in what Workday is going through now with the legal issues. They purchased a software company, they implemented some of the algorithms of that software company, and now they are steeped in a legal nightmare because the programming, as many of you know, and for those who don't know, the programming was screening out certain aspects that would tie back to an older adult on their resume or on their application. So AI can be a great tool if it's used properly. It can also be a weapon and can be harmful if it's not. Nobody wants to get caught in what workday is going on right now. So we'll talk about this a little bit later in our conversation, but it's important for human resources to not just take software or treat software out of the box.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And let's be honest, HR professionals are busy, and you could see why it would be very tempting to just leave on the default settings and run the software as is.
And many of us today use ChatGPT, we use Copilot. If you're a Microsoft user, well, one of many different artificial intelligence tools that are available to the masses, in many cases for free. I use artificial intelligence all the time in my work. Very, very helpful. But with that being said, it can be dangerous. So we have to remember that AI is not in charge. The person using the AI is in charge.
Ooh, I absolutely love how you phrase that. AI is not in charge. The person using AI is in charge. And that's the key, right? I think most people assume that's actually being done. They trust that there's a human making that final decision.
Now I'll give the audience a new term. We HR people like to have terms. Sayings of the year, right? Ethical technology. So artificial intelligence needs to have an ethical aspect to it. And it's almost counterintuitive to have ethics in a software program. But with machine learning, it's important that we build in an ethical aspect to it. And then we can marry that with human decision making.
Okay, let's bring it back to ageism. Why do you think companies often overlook age diversity? And what practical things can HR do to bridge generational gaps?
Companies like to avoid ageism. It's almost an unspoken word. So why they do it? Because if they talk about it, they have to address it. So let's just start there. Let's call it as it is. If you see something, you have to do something, right? Like the advertisements, if you see somebody do something bad, you're supposed to tell somebody that something happened. Um, there's a myth that older workers are inflexible, they're tech averse, they're slow, they can't learn, they didn't grow up with the phone in their pocket, right? I didn't use my first PC until I was in college. So that'll give you an idea how old I am. And it wasn't that long ago. And this is all nonsense. And another issue that comes with age and talking about ageism is that there's this false notion that an older individual who is what they consider overqualified are going to leave as soon as they find the right job for them. But the data shows differently, that actually older adults, baby boomers specifically, stay in jobs longer than Gen Z and millennials. So you're actually shooting yourself in the foot, because if you think about it as an organization, why wouldn't you want to have a highly skilled individual with many years of experience? And conversely, one of the things that also is being spoken about recently in the past 3-4 years is cross mentoring, where younger or earlier career individuals that have certain skills that an older individual may not have learned or harnessed during their career are given an opportunity to learn from that 25 or 30-year-old who is really tech savvy or has used technology that might be brand new in the workplace. So companies need to find the middle ground with this. They need to understand that older adults are not the enemy. They're actually assets, not liabilities. And they can get two birds with one stone by harnessing early career individuals to mentor older individuals, to turn the tables, so that mentoring is not just age-based. Mentoring is skill-based. Should not matter how old you are. It should matter what your skill set and your experiences are. So by doing that, HR can play a big role. They can come in, they can look at the demographics of their workforce, of their teams. They can work with management to help coach, counsel, facilitate, having these managers work with their teams to do this cross-pollination. And at the end of the day, everyone wins. The employee wins, the organization wins.
That is so interesting, Mark. Do you think that will ever change? In other words, do you think ageism will get more attention as the generations change over within the workplace?
I absolutely believe that over the next 5 to 10 years, that ageism will go through a transition of being kept in the closet, not talked about, hidden, to being open, to being addressed. And that's in part because we were all 25 once. So the individuals who may be on one side of the equation now are going to move towards the other side of the equation later on. It's a natural evolution in the workplace that we go through generational change. And one of the things that we can be doing now is HR can be partnering with their marketing departments to look at how they project their employment brand to job applicants. The fact that you can go and see on a landing page of a company advertising for 50, 100, 200 jobs for a big company, and they have a bunch of 25 to 30-year-olds sitting around having a conversation. I very rarely see older individuals. I rarely see individuals with disabilities that are visible to those looking at the advertisement. When I read job advertisements on LinkedIn or on job sites, I hear verbiage of, we're looking for somebody who moves quickly and is exciting. And there's a lot of verbs and adverbs that give you the impression that you need to be youthful.
So, what do we do about that?
We have to be very cognizant of the visuals on your landing pages, in your advertisements, in the verbiage that's used for job ads, to make sure that we're not just having 25 to 30-year-olds sitting around a table having a conversation, that we're being truly inclusive, that we've got not only diversity of males, females, different physical attributes, ethnic backgrounds, but that we've got older adults in the room and that we have individuals, quite frankly, also with disabilities that are visible, because we rarely see that. There's very few companies that have harnessed both ageism and disabilities in their marketing. And remember, in the United States, that we do have many very capable, not only older adults, but also disabled adults, maybe physically disabled, but not mentally disabled, where they can provide value add in very high level jobs. They should not be reduced to working in jobs that are not visible to the public. And with that being said, we have to think about technology, and we have to be careful that human resource departments maintain the ability to make the judgment of what to do. We cannot abdicate that to the AI. We can't say to whatever system we're using, what should we do? We need to make the final decision. We can ask it, what are our options and what are the pluses and minuses? But when it comes to judgment, we need to still maintain that. And we need to impress that on our management as well, because there's a tendency now for people to use ChatGPT and other artificial intelligence.
Speaking of AI, HR is buzzing with all kinds of AI tools, from hiring algorithms to writing policies. I know you've been part of conversations on the ethical challenges of HR innovation. Do you see AI as an ally for HR or more of a troublemaker?
It's both. So I just mentioned that we should not provide to the AI tool the ability to make judgments. But what we can do is we can streamline processes. We can synthesize data at lightning quick speed. We can parse data. We can use it as what I refer to as a wingman or a wingwoman in helping us to get to a deliverable. But we need to, as I mentioned, we need to be careful about that. As I mentioned before, I've done consulting projects where it took me hours and hours to do the work, and I was in a billable hour environment. So I was saving money for the client, but I was also helping myself or helping my organization in doing it, because then instead of spending time on administrative detail, I could focus on the strategy. I could focus on the deliverable. I could focus on the what's next once we delivered that product. So it certainly can be an ally, but we have to be really careful. And I'll go back one more time. We cannot allow artificial intelligence to make decisions for us. Bad news.
You've spoken about the dark side of HR. Those times when HR has to stand up to unethical or toxic executive behavior. But not everyone in HR feels safe pushing back on the CEO. How can HR professionals find the courage to speak truth to power and hold leaders accountable?
This is the hardest part of any HR executive's job. And I can tell you firsthand that I've been put in this situation many times. In fact, at one point, and I'm not allowed to share all the details, at one point, I had to say to executive management what they were doing wrong. I gave them the reasons why, and I literally put my job on the line. Now, I did not get fired or shown the door when this happened. Fortunately, my pushing back had positive results, and management listened to me in this one very critical situation. But it's fair warning to all, because we've seen the Tychos and the WorldComs of the world. We've seen the Enrons of the world, where management, good people, very smart people, go to the dark side. And here's my last HR Jedi reference. Most people don't start off bad. They don't start out as liars or cheats or doing things that would be considered malfeasance. But something happens during their career. And whether it's the statement from Wall Street, greed is good, that money and power gets in the way, or something else, or ego, sometimes people turn bad and do bad things. HR plays a critical role of being the conscience and the gatekeeper of your organization. Now, I'm not talking about being Inspector Gordon, of being the police chief. What I am talking about is there is compliance, which is here, which is doing the right thing. And then there is doing ethically correct things, which is much higher. And I always spend time talking about compliance is what you have to do. Ethics is what you should do. And there's some gray area in there, because we all get a paycheck, and if leadership wants us to do something and it's a little bit tarnished or gray, we have to make decisions every day of what we should do. On a personal note, I like to go to sleep at night, and I can tell you that I have rarely, if ever, lost sleep because I felt that I made a bad decision in terms of ethics. I've made many bad decisions. We all do. Decisions that we'd like a do-over on. Decisions that we have a little bit of regret or wish that we could do differently. However, on the big ones, we need to stand strong. HR people need to have a backbone. We cannot be Pollyannas. I've also been known as a person that has HR with an attitude. Well, that attitude gives me assertiveness, not aggressiveness. Some people confuse aggressiveness and assertiveness. Assertiveness is being able to speak up and speak truth to a situation. And we all need to do that. My advice to everyone watching this, if you work in HR or you work in any vocation in business or in an organization, is do the right thing, be ethical, because in the end, it will not come back to haunt you or your organization.
Well said. Now, Mark, you've done a number of speaking engagements over the years across the US. What's next in your schedule?
Well, I'm back on tour. I feel like one of those rock bands that has the rock band Kiss has done their final tour 6 times in the last 15 years. The Rolling Stones are still touring or did last year. So I'm a lot younger than Mick Jagger or Ronnie Wood or Keith Richards. So, and even the Who are touring. So I feel okay to say that I'm back on tour. I like to call this the last HR Jedi tour. And my topic is what now, responding to the new White House agenda. I will be speaking at the Long Island SHRM conference this September. And about a week and a half later, I will be up in Albany, New York, speaking at the New York State SHRM conference. And we're going to get into the nitty gritty. We're going to talk about all the changes. We're going to talk about the rollback of DEI. What do you do now? We have all these programs. We all have all these affinity groups. We're going to talk about immigration. So for some organizations, this is not an issue, but for many organizations, this is a major issue. You have employees, whether you are in retail or a service industry, and you're directly impacted by a significant portion of your workforce, or you could even be in an office setting and have employees or employees with family members that are scared because of the immigration policies. And as an HR professional, you have to be concerned that a government agency, ICE or another agency, could walk in the door of your business one day and say, we'd like to speak to an employee. And then the question is, what do you do? Do you do timeout? Do you call your legal counsel? Do you say no? Do you take them right over to that employee? Where does your responsibility start and end when these issues come up? So these are the first 2 legs of my last HR Jedi tour. And as time goes on, it's very, very important for HR executives to know how to embrace this. It's not always what you know, it's knowing how to find out how to do it.
Mark, this has been an incredibly insightful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and thoughtful perspectives. Before we wrap up, do you have one key piece of advice you'd like to leave our viewers with, particularly for those navigating the evolving landscape of HR?
HR can no longer play it safe. We're navigating change, technology disruption, and we sit as the individuals who are helping to shape the workplace of today and tomorrow. So my advice to HR folks around the globe is don't ask permission. Just go and do it, and you'll be better off.
Excellent advice. And thank you again for being here today, Mark.
Jay, I want to thank you for allowing me some time to talk about the future of HR, the future of work, artificial intelligence. It was great to meet you, and I hope to see you again soon.
And thanks to all of you watching. If you've enjoyed this conversation and want to see more groundbreaking HR discussions, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Until next time, keep innovating, keep connecting, and keep making HR more human.